Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 194 of the Terminal City FC podcast, part of the Area 51 Sports Network. Josh Ray not joined alongside Nathan Durek as per usual because he is on vacation still. He'll be back next week. I'm joined by good friend of the show, Alexandre Gonge Ruzik of One Soccer, Third Sub, and the Northern Football Podcast. How are you doing, Alex?
Doing well, Josh. It's great to hear Nate's on vacation. Hopefully, he's enjoying the time off, and I'll do my best to fill his very tall shoes. I'm not quite as tall as him, so I'll do my best.
Yeah, he's just chilling on the island with his family, and of course, when he goes on vacation, a lot of Whitecap stuff is happening. Big Whitecap stuff. So, as you all know by now, unless you're living under a rock, Thomas Müller is officially a Vancouver Whitecaps player. It's still surreal seeing him wear the Whitecaps jersey, have his name on the back. He won't arrive until Wednesday and will be unveiled to the media on Thursday. So, you and I will both be there for his unveiling for a historic moment in Vancouver sports. But, Alex, I'm just going to get your perspective on this whole thing because it's just still so surreal. It's hard to believe that it's actually happening.
Yeah, it's such a huge deal, right? Like it's something where this Whitecaps team, especially in the last 15 years, they just haven't really come close to getting a star of this magnitude in terms of the resume he brings, the pedigree. Most of the stars we've seen have come through wearing the jersey of the other team. Like we've seen Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Lionel Messi. I remember seeing Pirlo. That was pretty cool. Wayne Rooney. But now Thomas Müller is week in, week out going to be wearing Whitecaps number 13. He's going to be doing his thing. He's here to win too. There's no, worries about if he's taking this as a retirement stop of anything of the sort. And ultimately this deal happened because the Whitecaps also feel like he can take them to the next level. And based on the team they've built, it's hard to argue that's that case. I think this is just so exciting because it makes sense. This isn't some desperation ploy or some sort of marketing ploy. Ultimately, it's a move where the Whitecaps feel they can make themselves better and where the player still feels like he has a lot to give. And that excites you a lot more than, some of the other transfers around MLS where when they're bringing in a star like this, there's usually one of those conditions aren't necessarily the case.
Yeah, and he's coming here to win. As Axel Schuster has said, they didn't sign Thomas Müller because of his name. They signed him because he fits what they need tactically. And I talked about it last week, how I see him playing behind Brian White as the Raumdeuter. And Jesper Sorensen, even today on Sportsnet 650, pretty much hinted at that. But since Alex is more tactically inept than me, I'd like to get your perspective on how you see Müller playing under Sorensen.
I was going to say, don't sell yourself short, Josh. I think you're bang on. I think it's going to be some sort of formation where he sits right underneath them. I imagine the Whitecaps are going to have to switch to some sort of 4-2-3-1. Allows them to still use their wingers. They got a lot of quality wingers. Jaden Nelson, Ali Ahmed. I know Sabi's found a bit of form lately. You want to keep, as many of those guys in the lineup as possible. And I think a 4-2-3-1 does that. Of course, you have to keep a spot open for Ryan Gauld if and when he's back to full speed. Because obviously he can bring a lot. But Thomas Müller, what's nice about him is he's fits kind of anywhere. It's been mentioned, but in Germany, when you look at where he played on the wings sometimes. He played as a 10. He led the line as a 9. Even in desperation scenarios, he was deployed as an 8. And I think that's a bit of an asset to Vancouver that they can find a role that fits him. But I like the idea of them, like Sorensen said this morning, making him a bit of a centerpiece because he's just such a smart player that the play will naturally come to him. He'll naturally draw guys in and bring them in. And this system, I think, really suits him. Like the fact that he's coming to a team that's going to dominate the ball, that's going to want to attack, that gets the ball to the box with regularity. He's one of the best players in the history of the game in and around the box. So it's nice to know that he's on a team, not one where they're trying to counterattack or one that they're trying to sit back. He's joining a team that fits his strengths. And Jesper Sorensen's a smart coach who's done well to get most out of his players. And I think Thomas Müller will be no exception, I hope.
Yeah, and Sorensen's tactical approach pretty much sold Müller on the Whitecaps. And it just fits so well since he can play literally anywhere. And they call him the Raumdeuter for a reason because he's an interpreter of space. And the thing about watching Müller for all these years of watching football is that you don't notice him until he makes an impact. And that just suits the Whitecaps' controlled possession-based system as well. I'm going to bring up my projected lineup with Müller. Forgot to do this last week. I think it glitched last week, but
Let's see, four
there
two
you
three
go.
one. Yeah,
Yep, 4-2-3-1. I messed up by putting Ahmed and Gald on the wrong sides, but that could also work.
I think this. I
And
mean, Ali
yeah,
Ahmed's good on the left too, right?
yeah, he's
And
good on the
Gald.
left.
I mean, I guess in this case, Gald on the right. Maybe Ocampo comes in too at right back and kind of offers him a bit of support as well down that side.
Yeah, and for those wondering why there's no number for Müller, this was like last week, right after the Here We Go was given, and we weren't sure what number Müller was going to be given, but he will take the number 13, which he wore with the German national team, and Ralph Priso pretty much gave up the number, and Priso is now wearing number 6, which I think that number suits him.
It's his position. It's his position, and let's hope that Thomas Muller is a nice guy and maybe he gets him a little gift. But I think it's a win-win because Ralph Priso rocking the number 6. It also is a bit of a sign of how good he's been this year, where he's that number fits him. He's been playing a lot. He's playing a good role, and I'm sure it was funny to see him joke about it too. How he wants to follow in the greats of guys like Paul Pogba and Verratti who wore it, and of course he had a jab saying he's happy to wear Tristan Blackman's old number. I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I mean Blackman's a good defender at the back, good teammate, someone I'm sure he looks up to. And now Priso and Jeevan Badwal and all the young guys on the team will have like one of the best leaders in the sport on their team, and just like I said, a great character too.
I say that's the exciting part for at least for us, that he's he handles himself so well in front of the camera. He's charismatic. He wants to take on that responsibility, so to speak. I think that's going to be good, because ultimately it's great when this team has personalities. At the end of the day, when you're trying to sell this sport in this market, it helps when there's personalities, right? Like there's a reason that when Vanni Sartini was here, that helps the Whitecaps, because all of a sudden radio stations want to bring him on. He was a face you wanted to see on TV, and having a guy like Thomas Müller who's charismatic, who's funny, that's great for the team. Of course, like they mentioned, they're not bringing him in to be a marketing ploy, so he's not going to be everywhere. But it's good that he has that in him, and I don't think he'll understand the certain responsibilities and obligations you fulfill. He knows it at Bayern. He was such an great ambassador for the club, and of course that extends off the field. I think the great news too is the relationship he built with a guy like Alphonso Davies when he came in as a youngster, new to the country, doesn't know the language. The fact that a guy like Müller was quick to take him under his arm and help him at Bayern. I think you can't help but think of Jeevan Badwal, Ralph Priso, heck, even some of these younger guys coming through the academy. Immediately I think of like Ryan Alumi and Liam McKenzie, two kind of attackers, especially McKenzie, a number 10 type. Man, imagine in training and reps when you're split up by position and you're sitting at the number 10 cone and you look over and Thomas Müller is out there giving you instructions, teaching you little things. I mean, that's a dream for a young player to have that sort of environment.
Yeah, and just the Whitecaps never, like you said at the top, had that kind of marquee signing. I mean, Kenny Müller was kind of a big deal. YP Lee too, Ryan Gauld in a way, but nothing like this. I mean, of course, Messi is Messi, but Muller's obviously a tier below. And I can't wait to go to the unveiling next week. And speaking of Alphonso Davies, Müller said to One Soccer on that video that talked to Davies a lot about the city and what it's like here, but he didn't really need much convincing because it seemed his mind was set on Vancouver.
That's it. I think they did a great job of selling it to him, I guess you can say. Of course, like they mentioned, for him, it wasn't so much a sales pitch of what is Vancouver, what is all that. Like for them, it all started and ended with the football. Again, I love that what sold him wasn't an Axel Schuster who By the way, sounds like he had some pretty cool connections with Müller dating back to 2010 when he was at Mainz, not even at Schalke. So obviously that German connection comes in handy. It's not the owners, but no, a call with Jesper Sorensen being like, Thomas Müller, this is where I see you in the team. This is how you can help us get better. But yeah, at the end of the day, Müller, like we mentioned, it helps that, he's not coming to an ugly place. He's not coming to a bad place. He's coming to one of the best cities in the world. He's coming to a city that's similar to where he's from. He's pretty much spent his whole life in Bavaria. And I've not been fortunate enough to go to Bavaria myself, but everyone who's gone tells me about how lovely and beautiful it is, and also how similar it is to Vancouver. That can't go, unignored, because with Müller, what's kind of cool about him, he seems like a down-to-earth guy. Like, you read about him, he loves his horses, he keeps a low profile. He's going to be a guy who loves a city like this, where that's kind of the vibe. It's not an LA where there's that glitz and glamour, or a Miami where there's that certain glitz, right, that comes with it, the TV, the extra factor. And I think that makes the city a good fit for a guy like him. And I'm sure Davey sold him on that. Like, yeah, this might be your kind of city versus some of those other options.
Yeah, and obviously Muller and the Whitecaps will be second behind the Canucks in hockey in terms of sports fandom. But, I'm sure he'll love it here. Maybe there's a stable somewhere on the west side for his horse. And, overall, the city has a good, culture for sports. And Germans love this city. I've talked to German tourists. They come here a lot in the summer, in the winter. There's direct flights to Munich and Frankfurt, daily. And Bayern Munich, I'm sure there's a passionate fan base of Bayern Munich fans here in Vancouver. There are a few on my Twitter feed who are just ecstatic about Müller coming here and already looking to purchase the kits, which I think are already flying off shelves. But yeah, Müller is officially a Vancouver Whitecap, sentence you and I thought we'd never say.
It definitely does feel pretty surreal. I mean, I remember once upon a time, the Whitecaps in 2019, they were linked to a guy like Olivier Giroud, and you wonder, man, what would that be like? Ultimately, it never came to fruition. Over the years, they've been linked to, some names, but never of this caliber. It is truly a surreal signing, because yeah, he's genuinely a star. I think that's been the big thing about all this to explain to people who don't maybe follow the sport as much, is yeah, he's not maybe he's not maybe a guy the general public will know as much as a Neymar, because he was just, such a flashy, such an incredible player. But man, I put Thomas Müller right up there with a guy like a Neymar in terms of the impact he's had at his club. And I just think that sells the idea of how big of a deal this is. So yeah, it's definitely going to be surreal. And I think sitting in that press conference, when you're throwing a question to him, to Thomas Müller, Josh, I think it's also going to be a highlight, because I know for me, it's going to be an absolute highlight talking to a legend of the game like that as well. It's just such a cool thing to say on so many fronts.
I think for everyone in that room, it's going to be a highlight. And yeah, Muller's going to be 36 in September. People are saying, oh, he scored one goal in the Bundesliga. People don't realize he's not the flashy type of player. And from watching some Bundesliga games, some Champions League games, and even the Club World Cup, he's still got it in a way. He's not as good as he was 10 years ago, but he's still got it.
Yeah, I thought he was a bit misused at Bayern this year under Vincent Kompany, just in terms of how much he got out of him, especially because he didn't have as much impact in the Bundesliga, but he scored a huge goal in the Champions League quarterfinals. They brought him off the bench against Inter Milan. He scored a huge goal, and was kind of a moment where people why isn't Thomas Müller maybe playing a big of a role? It's hard because Jamal Musiala played the same position. They had so many wingers that, they didn't want to bench a Leroy Sané, a Serge Gnabry, Kingsley Coman. If they didn't have to, they wanted to keep as many of those guys on the field as possible. So it's obviously tough. They also had Matisse Tell at a point, who was eating up minutes before he went up to Tottenham. So I get it was tough for Müller to play, but it felt like he still had some juice in his legs, which again, that's another thing. For 35, 36, you wave the red flags in terms of his age, but this was a guy that his running hasn't really changed from when he was 24 to now. He was never a fast guy. He was never an explosive guy. He was always a guy kind of known for his stamina. And hey, that stuff doesn't really go away as he ages. So I think that's something that's going to help him, that as long as he comes here and runs a lot, it won't matter how fast or he's running or anything of the sort.
And I'm sure a certain someone that we know will ask him about the turf. And from what I've been reading, he's played on turf before in Germany, especially with the DFB Pokal and all that, against the German lower sides that play on turf, which I didn't even know. I'm sure it'll be interesting to see what his takes are on turf. But moving on a bit, Whitecaps did make a move today, just like less than an hour ago. And it's a move that's not quite as big as Müller, but it just makes me feel like, yeah, this team is cooking up something, because let me just bring it up here. They have traded for an international roster spot from the New England Revolution for $50K in GAM. And now the Whitecaps have 2 international roster spots, and my sense is that 2 moves are coming.
Yeah, I would say your senses are pretty good. I mean, a lot of rumblings out there that they're looking at targets. I mean, I think that's to be expected. They need a center back. That's a must in terms of the Ranko Veselinovic injury, with him being out the rest of this season and probably, a decent chunk of next year with all the competitions they'll play. They'll hope to be back in the Champions Cup. They're going to need another center back. They definitely also need a left back. Having just Tate Johnson there, of course, Matthias Laborda can play there. I think having a left back there would be nice, with Adekugbe being out long term. And, Tate Johnson's had such a good season that some have wondered if he could attract European interest. It's just more the reason to get left back cover. Of course, there's other areas they could target. I mean, maybe you get another midfielder just to add some depth there. But other than that, it's really center back, left back. And that makes sense when you think of 2 international spots. And I just want to say they got a pretty good deal. I think earlier in the season, international spots were going for like $250K. I think they even sold one of theirs for around that price. So for them to get $50K, I know it's halfway through the season, so you're getting limited value on it. They did pretty well to snipe one up on short notice, which makes you think that they're going to be targeting a couple internationals soon.
Yeah, and I believe this is the international roster spot that New England acquired from Austin last night. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the one. So, hey, 2 international roster spots, and I believe, they're going after a left back. Center back from, I'm pretty sure, Europe. There's been rumblings. So maybe in the next few weeks, we'll hear some more information on the Whitecaps on that front. And they're back in action tomorrow against the San Jose Earthquakes down in the Bay Area at PayPal Park. San Jose had a decent start to the season, but kind of been up and down lately. 7, 8, and 10. 10th in the Western Conference. I thought they were higher. 3 goal differential. I'm just looking here. Lost their last game to RSL 2-1. Yeah, they've been on a slide and haven't won since June 25th.
That's it. It's been a hot minute, man. But this San Jose team is a funny team. I think in terms of most of the underlying numbers and even some of the actual numbers, they might be one of the best attacks in the league. Like, Bruce Arena has built a very front heavy team. They got Joseph Martinez up front. He has 10 goals and 2 assists. Not bad at all for him. Of course, you got Chicho Arango, who they brought in, 11 goals, 2 assists. Again, not bad at all to have that as your 2 front men. And then, of course, Christian Espinoza. He's always good for production. 4 goals, 8 assists. Like, that front 3, you take that over a lot in MLS. That's, in terms of production, that's about as good as it gets. They've had a guy like Bo LaRue. He's had a sneaky good season in the middle. Like, they're a fun attacking team. The problem is they're an absolute mess at the back. Unfortunately, they leak goals, they leak chances. They have some of the worst defensive metrics in the league. So it's not surprising to see where they are in the table, because ultimately, as we've learned in new MLS, you can outscore your problems as much as teams, even like in the past, LA Galaxy, they used to have this struggle, and it was last year was the first year they really fixed it enough to go on a run. And I think that's encouraging for San Jose, that down the road, if they can clean up at the back, they can be a good team. But yes, right now they're a team that scores a lot and concedes a lot. And against the Whitecaps team that's very good defensively, this could make for a very interesting matchup.
Yeah, 47 goals scored, 44 against, which is good for the offense, bad for the defense. And yeah, this team has been leaky at the back all season. And like Arango, Espinoza, Martinez, that's a good front three. And Whitecaps got to be wary of those three. Joseph Martinez, even though he's like 30 plus, still scoring goals. If speaking of unks. And yeah, San Jose is going to want to get back into the win column because over a month without a win is not good enough for them. And hopefully the Whitecaps are recharged, rested after the break, which they fully deserved, and hope to get back into business down in San Jose. And I'm just taking a look at last year. I believe the Whitecaps, they beat them down in San Jose. Oh yeah, they beat them twice.
I remember that the first one was the Ali Ahmed goal.
Yeah,
the nice goal, and then the second one, I don't remember the second one.
I think that was Alessandro Schuff blasting it from just outside the box.
Dude, that's a shout. Yep. No, you're right. That was the Shop banger. Yes, 2-0 September. Or no, it was Pico. It was Armstrong. That's what it was. It was Armstrong's first goal. His first and only, I guess it would have been.
First
there
and
was
only.
That beautiful
regular
goal where it was like tiki-taka. Oh yeah, Shop scored in San Jose. You're right.
Yeah,
you're
in
right.
San Jose. Yeah,
you're right. So okay, those two, the Whitecaps, they had a good record, and of course Bruce Arena wasn't there though, and that's always a bit of a different beast when he's behind the touchline.
Yeah, veteran MLS coach, and lots has changed between both sides since the last two teams met in September. Like Fafa Pico and Stuart Armstrong are no longer with the Whitecaps, and of course San Jose didn't have Arango and other names. So
Martinez, like they've changed a lot. Like they brought in like half the New England Revolution, it seemed, in like 4 different trades. So that also, all these guys like Jones and etc. Mark Anthony K, name that Whitecaps fans might know, right? Lots of interesting names there.
Yeah, MLS journeyman, you can say, Mark Anthony K. But other big news surrounding another Canadian team this week. Kind of feels like it went out of left field. Jordy Mihailovic, traded from the Colorado Rapids, apparently won it out there for about $8 million to Toronto FC. And Nathan and I talked about it a few weeks ago, that wondering if Toronto FC were going to sign a DP to like plant the seeds for the future. And it looks like they've done that with Jordy Mihailovic, who's 26, in his prime. I didn't even know he was 26. I thought he was closer to 30. But yeah, this plants the seed for Toronto's rebuild after the failed Insigne Bernadeschi era.
Yeah, it's wild, like you mentioned, his age, because he's been in MLS since like 2017. He was like 18, 19, a homegrown with Chicago. And then he had a good year there. Montreal traded for him. He had a couple good years there. Went to Europe, came back to Colorado, had a 1.5 good years in Colorado. Yet he's still 26, but that's why I think this is a good move for Toronto. I think this is the sort of move more and more MLS teams are starting to make, targeting these guys, where ultimately in MLS you need to find a balance between wanting stars, wanting some of these older players. Obviously, we've seen an influx into the league in recent months, like Müller, like Son, like Rodrigo De Paul, all these sorts of guys who are maybe on the wrong side of 30, who are very talented. But Müller works because the Whitecaps have signed guys like Gold and Kubas and have all these productive players around him. LAFC, of course, you know how loaded they are with the stars and foundational pieces they have across their team. For Toronto, when they signed Insigne and Bernadeschi, they were kind of just like, guys, we need you to carry. And it turns out this is an MLS of 10 years ago where you can just carry a team on its own. Even Zlatan Ibrahimovic put out one of the best seasons this league has ever seen, and his team didn't even make the playoffs. This is a different MLS. So I think what's nice with Mihailovic, he's proven he can be the centerpiece on a contending team. He was that at Montreal when they finished top 5 in the league last year. Colorado, he helped them get to a playoff spot under new coach Chris Armas at the time. So I think at Toronto, based on what Robin Fraser was saying in the press conference earlier today, he really sees him as a centerpiece, a key foundation of this team, and now it gives them something to build around. Now, if they can bring in a couple more Mihailoviches, maybe a guy of a similar age and profile up front in midfield, and then who knows, maybe they have room to get a star and one who doesn't have to come in and be the guy. Maybe he can play a bit more of a supporting role. All of a sudden they could start to cook something up, because I think that's the model that a lot of the teams like the Whitecaps, LAFCs, Cincinnati's, that's kind of been the model to follow right now. Philadelphia Union's another team doing that very well. You got to focus on building the right stars before you go after the big stars.
Yeah, and Mihailovic, 9 goals and 7 assists this season for Colorado. Absolutely lit up the Whitecaps last month when the Whitecaps played down in Colorado. And this is the start for Toronto FC. And this is not a Jovinko or Altidore type signing, maybe like a Pozuelo, where it's just the start of something. It's going to take a while for Toronto to get back to where they want to be. And let's see what they do from here going into the next winter, next season. Do they add some more key pieces around him? But you obviously got to build a good team around the guy. Like, you can't expect Mihailovic to carry every single week. And he's apparently signed a long-term deal, so he's part of the plans going forward for Toronto FC. And yeah, Son is also official in LA. And like I said last week, I'm pretty sure most likely this is going to happen. The Whitecaps and LAFC meet in the playoffs. So we got Müller versus Son, but LAFC, it's what they do. They sign the big names and paid a record fee to Tottenham Hotspur for Heung-min Son. LA's got a great Korean culture. Like, they have Koreatown there, Korean fans. So that also is big for them and MLS.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Nathan will surely want the Whitecaps to face LAFC. I imagine him seeing Son wouldn't be the worst thing for a Tottenham fan. And I understand, because I'm not a Tottenham fan, but I've always liked Heung-min Son. I think he's just a good character, good player. And for LAFC, like, what a sign of ambition for them in terms of the money spent. Look, it comes with all sorts of question marks, because it feels like now in the modern game, what did they end up splashing? Just over 25 million US dollars it ends up being. You do wonder if there was some player in South America, maybe some younger player in Europe, they could have poached for that sort of money. That might have provided a bit more of an impact. But at the same time, Son's a nice medium, because he is still 33, which feels old, but it's not. Like, he was still he had a drop off last year for Tottenham, but he was still one of the top 20 in the Premier League in terms of expected goals and assists. He still had almost 10 goals. He was Tottenham's captain as they won a major trophy. I still think he has a lot to give, and I think what he's going to bring off the field in LA, huge Korean population, just a recognizable star, I think ultimately makes sense for LA, and credit to them, because it feels like they've found a great model of building a good team, but then, also not being afraid to bring in guys like Carlos Vela, Olivier Giroud, Hugo Lloris, and now Heung-min Son, recognizable stars that can push a team over the top. And what's nice for Son is, despite the fee paid, LAFC is already a good team. He can only help them get even better.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how he works with Denny Bouanga. Bouanga and Giroud just didn't work out, and they didn't really have any chemistry. So we'll see if Bouanga and Son provide some chemistry. And LAFC, just a deep team, anywhere. Got some good young guys like Ordaz, David Martinez, and of course you got the veterans like Chanot, Bobasi, Tillman. Just all around well-built team that's obviously expected to go far in the playoffs.
I do wonder for Son if I know there's been a lot of talk about what he does at left wing, because Bouanga's kind of owned that role. Son always looked good as a striker. I always found as a false nine for Tottenham. He was always dangerous, and I feel like him being a false nine that Buanga can kind of play off of works, because LAFC never really has a striker. That's partly why Giroud didn't work, because they're more of a team that hits teams on transition with speed, and that sort of like. And Son still had a lot of sprints last year. Still, physically he wasn't, able to handle playing out wide on the left wing as much as possible. So I definitely think Son leading the line with Buanga off him could be a bit of a dangerous proposition, especially if they can surround it right. And hopefully there's a role for Canadian Mathieu Choinière to play in that team as well, because it'd be cool if he could be playing some passes to Son from the deeper areas in midfield.
Yeah, like I mentioned last week, the guy needs minutes because he didn't really get it at Grasshoppers, and back in MLS, a league that he knows. Good opportunity for Mathieu Choinière as well. So we'll wrap it up with a CPL rundown, something Alex obviously specializes in. Interesting matchups this week. Let's start here in BC. We got the Sailors C Derby in Langley, Vancouver FC and Pacific, who both won last week. Pacific won a tight contest against defending champions Cavalry with Sean Young's stoppage time winner. And then Vancouver FC won for the first time in I don't remember how long, 2-1 in Halifax.
Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one, obviously, because it means a lot. These are two teams, Pacific in 6th, Vancouver in 8th. They need a win if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. Draws don't help. Losses certainly don't help. So this is a big moment for them to really make up some ground in the table. They both got big wins that, especially what was big. Cavalry and Halifax are both 4-5 right now. They're the two teams they're chasing. So not only do you get a win, it's a bit of a 6-pointer. And what's good, I say this is going to be a good match, because even if you take the table out, no matter when these teams play, it's fireworks. The last time they played, I was out there in Langford, out in the island. It was a 4-4 game. Bonkers game. Four goals after the 75th
that's a CPL
minute.
classic.
Like one of the best games I've ever seen. Yet these guys kind of produce it for fun. Like I think there's a stat that they've scored 40 goals in 11 meetings, which is an average of 3 per game. So you're always getting goals, and 11 or 12 of them have been after the 75th minute. You get a lot of late goals when these two teams play. So for whatever reason, everything goes out the window when they're on the field. They just want to win so badly that chaotic things happen. And I think given how important it is for them to get a win this weekend, I'm expecting the same. So that should be good, because these BC games don't tend to disappoint, at least in terms of entertainment factor.
Yeah, I expect an entertaining one, some fireworks, hopefully some late drama as well. And you mentioned Cavalry and Wanderers. That's who they're playing. Big playoff implications here.
Yeah, huge, because both are in terrible form, quite frankly. Like Halifax, winless in 4, Cavalry winless in 3. And they just, both are struggling. Cavalry can't buy a goal right now. Halifax has kind of lost a bit of magic defensively. Maybe, and they're not struggling to find the balance offensively that they had earlier in the season. This is huge, because if any team can grab a win, they're going to need it, because York right now are surging. Ottawa and Forge are pulling away. Cavalry and Halifax, they're still comfortable that both should make the playoffs as it stands. Although never say never with, Pacific and Vancouver and Valor. The crazier things have happened in this league. So definitely someone getting a win in this game will be super important. But this definitely does feel like it has draw written all over, which doesn't do either a favor. So I do wonder if that kind of pushes, especially Cavalry. Like Cavalry is one where they feel a bit hard done by, a bit unlucky in terms of how they've played. I think they'll have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. Although Halifax, at the same time, they want to hit the reset button. So lots at stake for both teams in this one. Definitely one of the bigger games of this weekend.
Yeah, and I had to predict I'd go with a 1-1 draw. And then Valor is also hosting Atletico Ottawa, who is 1 point behind Forge for first place.
Yeah, and Forge has a tough game this weekend. And of course, they have one eye on the Whitecaps, which, might come into selection, to think about. Of course, Ottawa themselves have a pretty big tie against Vancouver FC, although they're probably not as, worried about it. They do have a deep team, and, maybe they'll be able to rotate a bit more in Langley in midweek. So I think for Ottawa and Valor, of course, Valor, they need to get some form. They need to get some momentum. They recently beat Cavalry at home, which was a big victory and something for them to build off. but Ottawa's kind of had their number this year, and especially a guy like Sam Salter has loved playing Valor. He had that 4-goal game, record game earlier in the year. So tough game for Valor. I think Ottawa, after falling behind Forge for the first time in a while, are going to be a bit hungry. So I'm expecting a big performance from them. So it's really going to be on Valor to try to stem the tide of Ottawa, because many teams haven't. Halifax is the only team that's done it this year, because otherwise Ottawa's won or drawn every other game they've played in. But when you're facing a Forge team that's invincible in the race for the title, that shows why Ottawa, despite their good record, is now 1 point behind them.
Yeah, York has been surging, and Forge still undefeated, and they will visit York Lions Stadium to face York, and this should be an interesting game as well.
Yeah, I guess it's rivalry weekend, because you got Salish Sea Derby on one end of the country in Ontario and the GTA. You got the 905 Derby between Forge and York. Should be good. Forge kind of had York's number last year. This year it's been a pair of 2-2 draws. York are in great form, undefeated. I think it's 7 now. Forge are undefeated in 17 because they haven't lost yet this season. Like this is a game between two informed teams. And what's nice is, like, York aren't very fun to play against. Like they're chippy, they defend well, they counter, they're talented. They're going to give Forge a good game. And then Forge, they're not fun to play against either, because they can dominate games. They can really, there's a certain ruthlessness around them. That's why it's going to be fascinating to see how they look against the Whitecaps, because that's going to be such a good test of how good this Forge team can be. But first, this York game, like, it's an important one. It feels like Ottawa is going to have a statement to make to regain their spot. So it's going to be on Forge to try and pick up a victory and keep hold of that lead they just gained in the table.
Yeah, and should be a good week of CPL football. And if you're going to any of those games, have fun. So that'll conclude this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what I'm doing right. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Check out my articles for Area 51 Sports Network. Check out also got a new Canucks writer, Austin Wadhwa, who covers the Canucks alongside me. I'll probably write a Canucks article sometime soon, since there isn't really much going on. So yeah, enjoy the football this weekend, whether that's MLS, CPL, or literally anything else. There's also baseball action, which I also will be watching tonight, but I'll be keeping an eye on the CPL tomorrow. So thanks you again, Alex, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. One of the top voices that covers Vancouver football and Canadian football. So general, if you haven't followed them already, do so on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram at AGR on the case.
Appreciate it, Josh. Pleasure as always to hop on, and just enjoy the football. I know as well your beloved Chelsea are back soon, so that's also going to give you something new to stress about each week, which I know will definitely keep you busy. I've been keeping an eye on Man United. That first game against Arsenal, it's looming. It's getting real. My fantasy picks are already starting to come in this week. Had a fantasy draft, so I'm looking forward to that. I know you will be as well.
Yeah, and Chelsea are playing a friendly right now against Leverkusen, and Willian Esteval scored his first Chelsea goal.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so what are you up to next in terms of your content?
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously big CPL weekend. Looking forward to be out in Langley for that derby on the weekend. Then, of course, looking forward to Thomas Müller unveiling next week. That's obviously a big one. Canadian Championship. I'll be out in Langley for Vancouver FC Ottawa, so I'm super looking forward to that. It's just some of the best times of the year, I find. Like, CPL is hitting the fun part of the year. Can Champ is hitting the business end. The Whitecaps have been giving us a lot to talk about. I hope to get out to some more Vancouver Rise games soon. They're on the road for a bit, which is unfortunate. Next game's not till like late August, but always great to get out to Swangard. So yeah, lots on the docket, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you at a few of these games, right?
Yeah, I'll be seeing you next week for the Müller unveiling, and of course when the Whitecaps play Houston Dynamo next week. So thank you, Alex, once again. That'll conclude this week's episode. Peace out.